Hey everyone, how's it going? My name is Richard Moglen, and welcome back to a Stock Market Outlook video sponsored by MarketSmith. As always, today we're going to run through the charts of the indexes, leading stocks, then we'll talk about sentiment from a few different sources, the IBD Big Picture article, and finally the Wishing Wealth GMI signal. And at the end of the video, I'll kind of put all those different sources of information together and give you my overall take on the market. So let me know your thoughts down below as we go. And make sure if you do enjoy this video to leave a like down below as well, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and let's go ahead and dive right in with the Nasdaq Composite. So overall last week we had a strong push off kind of oversold levels. Looking at a weekly, you can see how we were kind of stretched to the downside last week. And then this week we had a strong push through that prior week's high relative strength, peaking up on the Nasdaq Composite relative to the S&P 500. And on the daily chart, we had a wedge pop through this area and a nice price and volume action. I'll keep in mind that this volume here was skewed by some rebalancing. Overall, we're back above the 21 EMA, which is starting to increase just with kind of Friday's candle, Friday's bar, but we're still below a declining 50 and 200 SMA, and we're running into, potential overhead supply here. So don't think we're, out of the woods just yet. Keep managing risk, keep kind of using progressive exposure, and basically make sure that the risk reward is worth it if you are putting on positions. I would like to see us get back above a rising 50 SMA and definitely eventually a rising 200-day moving average. And we could easily kind of move up and just chop around for a few weeks. So don't feel like we're just going to start a huge new bull market right away. Things really have to kind of get moving and continue to improve, both in terms of the individual indexes as well as the market leadership. And I think that's probably the biggest kind of negative with this overall rally so far is, the indexes have made a nice push and stocks have moved off their lows. But we've kind of yet to see a lot of, expansive leadership groups really take charge, break out from sound bases. Right now, we've kind of got the solar group acting well, China's acting well, biotech's acting well, but there still is kind of a lot left to be desired in that department. So we'll basically have to see how things shape up. Moving on to the S&P 500, let's take a look at that index as well. You can see it looks very similar. And once again, we've got nice action on Friday. And overall, just kind of retaking that 21 EMA, but we're still below that declining 50 and 200 SMA. Moving on to the IWM, the Russell 2000 index, you can see similar action, nice move through this area, but we're actually still below declining 21, 50, and 200 SMA on this index. And we'll have to see if this can push through this overhead supply in this area. Moving on to the IWO, which is the Russell 2000 growth, you can see this acting better than the rest of the index, which is actually a very good sign. And lastly, taking a look at the FFTY, you can see this is still in a significant downtrend below all the key moving averages. And I think there was a lot of turnover on Friday, so we'll have to see whether this can improve. But in general, in terms of the indexes, things are acting, a lot better. But we still have a lot of work to do to get back above that overhead supply. And going back to the NASDAQ, we basically have to get back above 50 SMA to really say that, things are really shaping up. And I think this level here, 12,000, is going to be pretty key. I could easily see a rally into that 50 SMA, stall, and then once again, maybe a failure and kind of form a higher low here, or just kind of undercut these lows, similar to this area here. But, keep an open mind. We don't have to predict what's basically going to happen. We can anticipate, but, in real time, it's all about, reacting to what's actually in front of your screens and managing risk along the way. So with all that said, let's dive into a few individual names here. Tesla forming out a higher low and acting well late last week, but still below that 50 SMA as well as that 200 SMA. And I'd love to see us get back above that 792 area, which also lines up with that 50 SMA. Apple as well, starting to push off the lows, but a little bit weaker. You can see it formed a lower low, undercutting this level. Amazon as well. You can see basically held that low here. Nice push late last week, showing relative strength once again, back above that 21, but still has that 50 SMA to deal with, as well as that 200 SMA looming above as well. The rest of the FANG names are a lot weaker than those. Netflix in particular is acting pretty weak, although pushed late last week, but you've got these two gap downs. This is not really a stock that I'm interested in at all. We've also got Facebook. Actually, it's Meta now. I'm not going to call it Meta, but overall still below declining moving averages here. And I think if you're focused on those FANG names, focus on Google, Amazon, Apple, and Tesla. Netflix and Meta or Facebook, whatever you want to call it, are still just in pretty bad downtrends and not really bouncing with the rest of the market. Moving on, let's take a look at some semiconductor names. And these started to show a little bit of life last week. but they're still below declining 21, 50, and 200 SMAs. AMD as well, not great action, but just pushing through this high here. So we'll see if you can kind of build out something here, and maybe it kind of forms out a base under this level, and that would basically line up with that 200 SMA, and then we can see a big volume push on volume, restart that stage 2 uptrend. That's kind of what I'm looking for here. And in general in this space, PLAB is a small cap name that's already kind of broken out. It's above the moving averages, and if this space continues to see kind of some support, some rotation back into it, this could be a name to watch that has a lot less overhead supply to deal with than those kind of larger cap names. Moving on to some China names, we've got LI, which has been an absolute rocket ship off the bottom here, very short-term extended. So maybe it forms out a base, pulls back to 35 or this 37 level. That would be an area I'd be interested in. And if this does pull back and kind of form a constructive base, I'll be interested. But right now it's way too short-term extended. But I am watching DQ, which also has that kind of solar theme going for it. And I'm watching for basically a breakout through this tightness, the short-term tightness, and there's more of a swing trade type setup. But you can watch for a push through this high on volume. Nice burst off the low here in terms of price and volume action. And we're back above all those different moving averages. Also going along with that solar theme, we've got EMPH, which isn't quite as strong as DQ, but forming up a little bit. I love to see a big volume push, breaking through 217.23. But this is a name I'm watching. I do own some. I'm looking to add here to that basically 200 level if it reconfirms on volume. But I love to see kind of one inside day, and then you could use it inside day and up setup to manage risk versus this low or this one right here, or even the 21 EMA down below. But definitely there's some kind of pockets of strength, as I mentioned, China, chemicals, the biotech area as well. Let's go over to XBI. This has been acting pretty strong. We saw a lot of names come off the bottom here. We've got MCK. Vertex is a larger cap name to watch, which is acting quite well, breaking through this pivot on volume. And UTHR is a name that I own in this space that's also acting pretty well. I bought it basically on the undercut and reclaim of this low, as well as this level right here. I think my cost was around 224, and overall definitely an area to be watching here. I think it's basically the leadership group right now, which has its pros and cons, because this is a group that is a little bit more volatile, has a little bit more risk as well. So I'm trying to stick with the ones that have earnings and sales growth and decent fundamentals and fund ownership. So that's pretty much a run through of a few names that I'm watching. I'll have a complete list of names I'm watching for next week coming out tomorrow. So basically go ahead and subscribe if you want to see that video. And now let's move on to sentiment. All right, so moving on to sentiment, we saw an increase in bullishness from my Twitter surveys, but this is kind of to be expected given the strong market action we had last week. The name exposure index last Wednesday actually dipped below 20, which is a good contrarian signal. And overall, this is the lowest it's been in quite a while. Looking at the put-call ratio, we had that spike last week, which I talked about. And then basically we dipped below that given obviously the strong market action once again. So not really much to say in terms of sentiment. We are seeing basically a pullback in that extreme bearishness that we saw. Looking at the IBD Big Picture article, the headline is "Stock Market Rally Gains Pace as These Hopes Rise, Casino Stocks Hit the Jackpot." Overall, they discuss the action in the indexes, how there were some changes in Russell 2000, which is kind of skewing all that volume here. And they also discuss how we've got a change in the stock market outlook to a confirmed uptrend. I personally would prefer if they kind of had a kind of beginning uptrend where, we're not well underway, we're not in a new bull market, but we're in a potential uptrend. So that's kind of my personal stock market outlook, but they have a confirmed uptrend here. I discussed inflation a little bit here, casino stocks, and overall they've got some leaders up in volume and some down in volume as well. Lastly, we've got the Wishing Wealth GMI signal, which is still currently red, at least as of Thursday. And overall, my current view in terms of the market conditions is, once again, a kind of beginning uptrend. We're seeing a nice response, a few stocks kind of decouple and start to break out. But I love to see kind of more and more leadership continue to develop and overall groups continue to really buck the overall downtrend and break out of sound bases. Right now, we're not seeing enough of that. Biotech is pretty strong. Solar is kind of shaping up. But there's kind of just a lot of lone warriors around that are, showing a lot of relative strength. But, without that group and sector confirmation, you can't really tell if they're going to have a sustained rally. So overall, that's pretty much my take on the market. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you enjoyed this video and my analysis, go ahead and leave a like down below and subscribe if you're new to the channel. And I'll see you guys in future videos. Thanks.